Hello, my name is Karling Abbeygate. Welcome to my show, The Storyteller. Words and music are the magic of life, and I would like to share some with you. So if you will, please follow me. Hiding by RC Matheson. They'd been married 2 months when the first fight streaked down their lives like black dye. She'd never truly understood him, the delicately sensitive movements of mood and need that blew him kite-like from one moment to the next, ever changing, ever vulnerable. But she tried to understand because she loved his tender heart, the way he gently encircled her face in sweet hands as they made love, the way his shy smile would pillow her when they drank cappuccino in bed together, how he could make her laugh at invisible animals, silly voices. She giggled around him. Morning talks, naked and sleepy, were like a kid's party for 2, complete with exotic treats, pantomime hats, invented places. And though he could never really be sure she meant it, she cared about his feelings, his secret coastline. Sometimes, as he slept, a contented infant under thick wool, she would slip from bed and stare at his paintings on the bedroom wall, feathery watercolours, intense with hope, windows to perfect places, fragile places, hectic dreams in yogurt colours. She marvelled at his imagination, his exquisite sensitivity, how he could touch a surface or colour and tell her what it was thinking, how he could hold a cat and it would curl into a lulled nautilus in his warm arms, a child held by its mother. It was why she regretted the argument. It was the first time she'd ever raised her voice around him, and he sat so pale he seemed to be filling with snow. Then he wordlessly slipped from his morning spot, leaving the newspaper open, his cappuccino left to die. He went up the stairs. It was the last she saw him. He was still in the house, but she couldn't find him. She knew he was in there, sensed he was only hiding, grieving from the disagreement, healing from the momentary trauma. But he wouldn't let her find him. At rare moments, as she searched, she'd think she'd glimpsed some aspect of him, dashing around the curved mahogany banister at the top of the stairs, a flutter of trouser leg, an evasive elbow. Once, several days after he'd disappeared, she even sensed the ironically upturned corner of his mouth, a fragment of a melancholic smile in movement, suddenly sweet, suddenly gone. Weeks became months, and she would continue to leave food out to sustain him and to let him know she loved him. She would leave notes, at first angry, demanding he come out. But when they did no good, she feared she'd driven him more deeply into the shadows and creases of the house. Hoping it wasn't too late, she began to leave tender notes, Notes that told him she loved him, that she would wait for him, that she was sorry. There was never an answer. But the food still disappeared, and the plate, drinking glass, and silverware were always washed afterward by unseen hands. The cloth napkin was never soiled, the gingham check always pleasingly refolded, resembling a soft pattern of red bricks. Though others never heard it, and in fact assumed he had merely left her for another woman, she often sat entranced by the sound of his singing, cloaked by wooden plaster, seeping beautifully through the walls. He sang for hours, and his muted arias rose on sweet pain, perfect pitch. She tried to record the angelic morning as evidence she wasn't mad, that he was in the walls, hiding. But nothing much came out, just the suggestion of melody, compressed and small, audible only to a believer. And what few there had been were now falling away, sceptical and pitying. Their faith and sympathy had winnowed and fled, unable to further indulge the sad fantasy that no longer made sense, that really never did. The phone didn't ring. The mailbox sat empty. Seasons passed, forever gone, irreplaceable ledgers of the solemn two-story home that housed a lonely woman and her husband, who hid somewhere she could never get to fast enough. Her family suggested selling the house, but she couldn't bear the idea of strangers trying to find him by rapping on the walls, listening for a telling presence, scaring him. She couldn't stand that they might accept him but ignore his needs, that he might die of neglect or loneliness. She decided to stay with him in the house. They would live under one roof, though they'd never see each other. For her, it was better than nothing. And she always remembered what his mother had said about how, as a child, whenever his feelings were hurt, he would hide until he felt better. "He'll come out when he's ready," she had whispered. "Just speak quietly and be patient. Loud voices scare him." She never spoke loudly again. On Christmas Eve, she wrapped his presents using the brightly coloured paper and ribbons he'd always loved. She tiptoed down the stairs and left them under the tree. Then she went back to bed and stared at the walls, wondering if he were watching her too, wondering what he did for Christmas. She turned off the light and reached over from the bed, placing her hand gently to the wall's warm surface. She stroked it slowly, lovingly, fingers tracing its smooth flatness, remembering how she used to touch him. She began to cry, trying to make no sound, trying not to startle him and scare him away. "I love you so much. Please come back." She whispered, "I'll always be nice to you. I'm sorry." Her hand pressed the wall as if it were a huge palm, and she fell asleep, protected beside it. She went down in the morning, rubbing sad eyes. His presents were gone, but he'd left something for her. The first message he'd ever sent from the other side of the walls, from the corners and shadows where he hid. It was an envelope, and he'd tied it with a bit of the ribbon she'd wrapped his gifts with. She opened it eagerly and inside found a simple note. It read, "Soon." She smiled, feeling excited. She tried to imagine how he would look. A bit older, but the same. In her mind, they gazed longingly at each other, and he held out his arms to her, wanting to trust her again. "I love you," he would say, "and I missed you." "I love you," she would say. But for now, she got the logs going in the fireplace and put on Christmas music, and as the cat climbed on her lap, she spoke softly to it. "He's coming back," she whispered. "He's really coming back." That was Hiding, written by Richard Christian Matheson. After reading this wonderfully sad tale about a lover lost in the wars, I was inspired to write a song based on the story. So, if you will, let's go this way.
First fight, street down their lives like black dye. But she tried to understand because she loved his tender gently encircled her face in sweet hands as they made love. As they made love, he's still in the house, but she couldn't find him. She knew he was in sensed he was only hiding. He was still in the house, but she couldn't find him. She knew he was in there. He was only hiding, hiding. He was only hiding. Then he wordlessly slipped from his morning smart. The newspaper left open. He went up the stairs. It was the last she ever saw him. He's still in the house, but she couldn't find him. She knew he was in there, sensed he was only hiding. He was still in the house, but she couldn't find him. She knew he was in there. He was only hiding, hiding.
That was the song Hiding by Donnie Whitbeck, Richard Christian Matheson, Josh Gordon and myself. Next we have a short story called Behind the Door. Behind the Door by Karling Abbeygate. She bent her head down to the keyhole, then jumped back in fright. Was that an eye looking back at her? She ran to the top of the stairs, but didn't go down. She waited a moment, then got curious again. Bad move in the fuller scheme of things. Curiosity has killed a lot more than cats. She walked slowly back to the door and looked through the keyhole again. This time she didn't see anything, but there could be someone in there. The doorknob slipped in her hand. She got a firmer grip and turned it. The door stuck on the carpet, so she pushed harder and it opened. Standing in the middle of the room, she looked around. The room was bare white, with a bed and a few maps on the walls, nothing much else. On her shoulder, she was still carrying her tote bag. She took it everywhere with her. She had everything in it. People joked about it, said she was like Mary Poppins. She supposed, in a lot of ways, she was. Dean Hancock watched her from the closet. Slowly, with nerves on a razor edge, she went over to the first place she must check. Under the bed. She knelt down, sat the tote bag on the floor, her back now vulnerable, and lifted the plain blue blanket that hung down. She let her breath out. It was an all clear. Dean Hancock stared through the slightly open closet door. It would only be a matter of time before she got to this spot. His skin glistened with sweat, and he licked his dry lips nervously. He would kill her. He had to. She began to relax. Maybe she'd been wrong after all. Still, it wouldn't hurt to put her mind at rest. She would continue looking. No one hiding in the trunk chest that sat at the bottom of the bed. Only baseball stuff and toy cars, the usual. Wait a minute. A warning bell went off in her head. Wait a minute. She should have spotted this as soon as she came in the room. This was a bad sign. Again, she was on red alert. This isn't right. This is not good. Not good at all. Dean Hancock shifted a little closer to the gap. Only a little more time now. His breathing was heavy with anticipation. It needed to happen soon. His skin slick and white, his skinny body thin but athletic. He should be able to take her out, no problem. Unsure what to do, she let her instincts take over. She was not a fit woman, but she had a sharp sense of cunning when need called for it. She didn't feel like dying, not today. She lifted her hand and slapped her leg, laughing a little, a fake gesture that said all was obviously well and that she'd just spooked herself. Oh dear, silly old me. Then she walked swiftly to the door. As she did, her hand slid into her tote bag. A bag for all occasions. A bag her sweet mother had given her before she died. Her mother, too, had been a remarkable woman. The crouching, sweating Dean Hancock saw his opportunity and went for it. He pushed open the door of the closet, armed with nothing but youth, rage, and a desire to kill. Unfortunately for him, that wasn't enough. She flipped out the knife with surprising skill, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her cheeks. She only moved the knife slightly. The forward motion of his body did the rest. She let go of the knife and backed away. He grabbed the handle sticking from his gut and looked at her in disbelief, eyes wide and shocked. Blood left the area around the knife in pulsating spurts. It reminded her of someone pressing the button on a weak water fountain. She looked at his face and thought about running, but she didn't dare. She knew he might still be strong. He might pull the knife from his stomach and then run after her. She had to make him dead. She reached into her tote bag again and pulled out the 6-inch piece of metal tubing that she carried with her always. It was heavy, but now she was thankful of it. Good job she took the newspapers seriously. Staggering backwards, Dean Hancock knew he was in trouble. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He didn't want to die. As the world started to turn grey before his eyes, he only heard the pipe come down on his head. He fell to the floor. She raised the weapon high and struck him on the skull again and again and again. Not until skin and bone were hammered and broken and he didn't flinch, eyes staring bloody straight ahead, was she able to stop. The seriousness of the situation suddenly upon her, she fled out of the room and down the stairs. She stepped over the rest of the young man's family. A girl, now just a twisted piece of meat lying next to her dolly, a bloody rag with hair. The mother and father scattered loosely around. She hadn't known for sure there was a boy too, not until she saw the baseball stuff. My name is Karling Abbeygate, and thank you so much for visiting. See you next time on The Storyteller.